So if your idea is so good, why is nobody doing it already? When you're trying to persuade someone to do something, it's really easy to get overly absorbed in your own goals. And that makes sense. When you're trying to pull together an effective, practical solution to a problem that you care about, it's natural to put all your focus on the details of your proposal. Obviously, you have to have your own plan figured out if anything's going to happen, but you can get yourself into trouble if you only spend your time thinking about what you want your audience to do. Even though it might feel like persuasion is all about what you want, it really isn't. In fact, it's not even mostly about what you want. Recognizing that early can make a big difference in the long run. And I bring it up because I regularly talk to people who are planning persuasive arguments that are ultimately doomed to fail, even though they've done thorough research, come up with compelling ideas, and even laid out a practical implementation plan for their proposal. Despite all that, the best arguments can still fail because they don't consider the things that might get in the way. So it's common practice for me to ask people why their audience isn't already doing the thing they want them to do. If you can account for those reasons, you'll be well on your way to writing more effective arguments. Practical limitations are something that people often overlook when devising their persuasive strategy. And the most memorable case in my experience has been the writer who tries to persuade a college's dining services to overhaul menus across campus and stock local, fresher ingredients. It's a great proposal. I mean, I have a hard time imagining that anyone is going to be anti-good food. This is not an argument that's going to fail because the proposal is bad. This is an argument that will fail because it doesn't account for practical limitations. Imagine, for example, that you're the person in charge of dining services. Somebody comes to you with an argument that's backed by research and has broad support by the college community. And imagine that that proposal involves keeping dining locations open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, making arrangements with local producers to stock higher quality, fresher ingredients, and overhauling all of the menus to provide a wider range of foods at each meal during the week. If you were in that position, you might say something like, yeah, I'd love to do that, but... And then what would come after that but? Why would that be a hard thing to do, even if you agreed that it was a good thing to do? Right off the bat, you might say money, buying more expensive ingredients, offering more dishes at each meal, hiring staff to keep these locations open. It's not like you can just go get more money. How are you supposed to pay for all of that? Persuading dining services to overhaul the dining experience is a good idea, but there are reasons that it's not happening already. One of those reasons could be money. That money has to come from somewhere, but where? This is an argument that's going to fail because it doesn't account for those practical limitations. But imagine how much more effective and persuasive it would be if this argument said something like, I understand that these things that I'm proposing are going to be expensive and difficult, but don't worry about it, I've already figured out a plan. Then, if you were the audience, you'd see that the other person had thought deeply and carefully about your own situation and limitations, and had put in the work to find a way around those obstacles. And that becomes a far more persuasive argument because it's not just a wish list, it's a plan of action. When you consider the practical limitations in your argument, you set yourself up for a higher chance of success because you have a plan for dealing with the things that would keep even a willing audience from cooperating with your proposal. Take those limitations into account, and your argument will be much more persuasive. One of the more ham-handed kinds of arguments that I see is the one that doesn't account for the audience's core beliefs. We're very good at being convinced of the rightness of our own beliefs and of finding sources to support our own positions. But remember, it's not really about what you believe, it's about what your audience believes, and you're never going to get anywhere if you just throw all of your best arguments and evidence into asking your audience to do something that violates some of their core beliefs. For example, if someone has lived their whole life in a small town and that experience has instilled in them a sense of loyalty towards their friends and neighbors, you might have a difficult time convincing them to support the construction of a home improvement store that would put their friend's hardware store out of business. Even if the bigger store would be good for them personally, and even if you had the data to prove it, it would go against their sense of loyalty to the community. And so just like that, you'd be toast. But all is not lost. If you can acknowledge your audience's beliefs and then frame your proposal in a way that is responsive to those beliefs, you can still have persuasive success and gain the trust of your audience because they'll see that you respect the things that matter the most to them. So you could find a way to explain how the construction of the store would benefit the community, and maybe there's even a way to do it without putting the hardware store out of business. The point is that if your audience is concerned that your proposal violates their beliefs, find a way to present it so that it aligns with their beliefs. And I'm not saying lie to them, because of course that would be lying, not persuasion. So find a way to modify your proposal. Don't just walk up to them and say, yeah, this will probably put your friend out of business, but sorry, that's the cost of progress. Instead, find a way to show them how your proposal will be a benefit to them and support their loyalty to the community. Or you could take a cue from friend of the show, Kenneth Burke, who points out that not all beliefs are equal. There are some that we hold more closely than others. For example, there might be someone who opposes the practice of putting pineapple on pizza because of a deeply held belief that fruit simply does not belong on pizza. But imagine that that person had an even more deeply held belief that good food requires the careful balancing of flavors. You'll never persuade them if the argument is about whether or not fruit belongs on pizza. But you might make some headway if you make the argument about the balancing of flavors. You could say, for example, that the sweetness and acidity of pineapple can balance out the salty, fatty flavors that usually dominate on a slice. See, by appealing to a higher belief, you show your audience that you understand them, which makes them more willing to listen, and you also show them that your proposal will align with their beliefs rather than conflicting with them, which makes them more willing to follow through. Now, I think we've talked about counter-arguments and their place in persuasive writing before. A lot of people have it in their heads that they need to include opposing arguments in their own argument in order to appear somehow open-minded and unbiased. But that's foolish. All you've done is put a self-destruct switch in your own argument. You don't include other people's arguments in your writing to appear somehow noble or above the fray. Instead, you include them and respond to them so that your position isn't nullified by arguments from the outside. See, you might make a great case, but then your reader could say, yeah, actually that's a pretty good idea, but those people over there make an even better case, so I think I'll go with them. So if you're on one side of an issue, you'll want to be able to respond to the arguments of people on the other side of the issue, and that's not because you're going to persuade them. In fact, you probably never will. No, but your real audience, the people that you're actually trying to persuade, are going to be hearing arguments from the other side at the same time that they're hearing yours. And they're going to go with whoever sounds more persuasive at the time. So if you just present your side of things and never address the arguments being presented by the other side, there's a good chance that your audience might end up being sympathetic to your cause, but then end up siding with the other people. Again, the goal here is to show your audience that you understand who they are and what they're dealing with. If you're aware that they're hearing persuasive arguments from the other side, be ready to show them why those arguments aren't as persuasive as they sound. And you can even use strategies we've talked about here today. Show them how those other arguments are impractical or how they might violate some of their core beliefs. Again, not in a deceitful, manipulative way, but honestly and straightforwardly. If your idea really is better, you should be able to show how it is. And when your audience can see that your idea is better, they'll be much more likely to go along with your proposal. The great power of persuasion is in its practicality. It's not just about stating your opinion, it's about getting something done, and that requires a higher level of discourse. Just getting your audience to agree with you is not success. To succeed at persuasion, you need your audience to listen to what you have to say and willingly do what you're proposing that they do. And you're sure to short-circuit your argument's success if you fail to take into account the obstacles that might stand in your audience's way, whether those are practical limitations, conflicting beliefs, or opposing arguments from someone else. Take those things into consideration and show your audience a way around those obstacles, and you'll make it much less likely that they say something like, wow, I really like what you're saying, and I wish I could do that, but I just can't. So ask yourself, when you've cooked up a really great persuasive idea, why isn't this a thing already? If it really was such a good idea, don't you think people would already be doing it? Since they aren't, that probably means that something is preventing them from doing it. So find out what that thing is and then provide a way around it, and you won't just be making useless suggestions, you'll be making a difference. And that's really what we're after, so get to it, and I'll see you soon.